We are recording for today, as always, although for this particular session of the webinar, we are recording. We will not have it available quite as quickly as normal. We need to wait for some permission from the study people. So hang in there. If you're here today, you're getting it hot off the presses. If you are watching this in the future, welcome. And we'll let everybody know when it is available to watch. With that said, thank you for muting. Um, so that our speaker can have center stage. Feel free to use the closed captioning feature if you need that. If you have questions or comments while we're together today, please feel free to use the chat feature and we'll watch that. And with that, all those housekeeping notes, I will transition to welcoming back our speaker. She's been with us before, and we're glad to have Heather Gibbs, who is a registered dietitian and associate professor in dietetics and nutrition at KU Medical Center. She is the principal investigator of the ADMIRE and ADMIRE 2.0 study, which is our topic today. And Heather's research is focused on the shared nutritional health of people living with dementia and their care partners. During today's webinar, she'll share her findings on the nutritional health of the partnership and discuss our drumroll, I feel like is appropriate, now enrolling ADMIRE 2.0 study. And ADMIRE 2.0 is an 8-week lifestyle intervention delivered online for persons with dementia and their caregivers, focused on supporting multiple behaviors, including nutrition, exercise, stress management, sleep, and social connection for healthy aging at home. If you've read your My Alliance newsletter for the last couple of weeks, you've read about it. We now have a flyer and a QR code and a website, so I will put the link for the flyer in the chat for you to grab, and probably an upcoming issue of My Alliance will also have that flyer or image or link or something so you can get back to it. But before all that, you'll get it straight from the study investigator herself, Dr. Heather Gibbs. Welcome, all yours.
Thank you so much. And I'll just offer the spoiler alert that if you're part of the LEAP alumni group who I talked to on Monday, I thought I recognized you, David, from that group, and Lloyd. I'm giving the exact same presentation today, so bear with me in that. And I'll go ahead and share my slides and get started. And while I'm bringing those up, I just want to make you aware that it's perfectly fine, and I encourage you to add your questions to the chat, but I won't be able to see them while I'm presenting, so I'll close that at the end and then field your questions at that point. So, but sometimes it's helpful just to put them in there while you're thinking about them, and I understand that. So thanks for the introduction, Kelly, and for inviting me to join and giving me the opportunity to talk with you all today about the ADMIRE studies. I first talked with this group a couple of years ago when we were just enrolling for the study. And today I want to provide you with an update of what we learned from the first ADMIRE study. And then, as Kelly said, I will also be talking about what we're up to now. So the first ADMIRE study was titled, mostly because I wanted to use that word, but the full title of the study was Assessment of Dementia Nutrition Intervention Needs Among Care Recipients and Caregivers. So, as Kelly mentioned, I'm a registered dietitian, and my research currently focuses on equipping caregivers to support nutrition and overall health, both for themselves and for the people they care for. So, in addition to the ADMIRE studies, I also have an ongoing intervention with parents of young children, as well as these ADMIRE studies. So, nutrition, I definitely believe, is fundamental to good overall health. But specifically in families who are affected by dementia, there are challenges for both the care partner and for the care recipient to eat healthfully. So care partners may have a number of nutrition-related tasks like selecting, preparing, and serving food, and they may be changing some of their social habits, like eating out with friends less often, as well as changes to the shared mealtime experience might have occurred. So there are definitely shared challenges for the pair, but they may have experienced some challenges differently as well. So before I go further, I want to talk about a situation that dietitians refer to as nutrition risk. So nutrition risk occurs when factors like weight loss, and low food intake are present. And a diet that's low in energy, or we commonly call that, refer to that as calories, low in protein, low in vitamins or minerals, can lead to a decline in physical health because all of those nutrients are essential for us. And so without intervention on nutrition risk, this can result in a more serious situation known as malnutrition and conditions that are associated with that. Some of those listed here on the slide. So frailty, poor immunity, difficulty recovering from injury, worsening of pre-existing chronic conditions. And so as a result of this, individuals who experience nutrition risk are also at risk of hospitalization or having to move into care facilities. And of course, most prefer to remain in their homes and live healthfully there. So that's what we want to support. So eating for good health changes as we age. And I think it's very common for most of us to think about, when we think about nutrition, to think about restrictive diets and restricting our intake and trying to make our bodies smaller. But weight loss in older adults is often not a good thing. So instead of focusing on restricting intake, older adults, especially those who struggle with getting in enough food, should focus on getting enough nutrients to maintain their strength and keeping up with activities of daily living. And so this may be difficult for clients and people who've restricted their intake most of their life, maybe trying to follow a low-fat diet, for example. And they may find themselves needing to adjust their thinking about food and how food can help them to stay strong and how they can get the most nutrient value from the food that they eat. So a major concern for older adults living at home is getting enough calories. So if a person doesn't eat enough calories, it can lead to weight loss, which can reduce their muscle mass. And it's especially important to eat protein because protein is critical to maintain our muscles and body structures. But we also need to eat enough calories overall. So calories coming from carbohydrate or from fat. And this is to maintain our energy stores. If we don't eat enough of those other calories, then we actually have to use the protein that we eat and the protein that's stored in our bodies to maintain our muscle. And otherwise we will lose muscle. But if we eat enough calories, our body can use these calories to maintain energy, and that allows protein to maintain our muscles. Maintaining muscle mass is important for healthy aging because low muscle mass increases weakness and reduces mobility. And both of these factors can increase the risk of falls, which are a major concern. So that gets to part of the purposes of the Admire study. And we were really interested here in learning more about nutrition status in care partners and in care recipients. And so surprisingly few studies have actually investigated what the nutrition needs are of care partners to people with dementia. And that's surprising because we know that nutrition risk increases in both of these groups. So we also were interested in how nutrition status is linked within the pair, and we really wanted to perform the study to help inform us of how we could help both care partners and care recipients achieve good nutrition status. So there were two stages of data collection for this first study. One was collecting information from the pair, and then we also separately did interviews with care partners. And so in the next few slides, I'll talk about the data that we collected in both of these stages, and then I'll tell you what we learned collectively. So for the first study opportunity, we evaluated nutrition status both for care partners and care recipients. The care partners had diagnosed Alzheimer's dementia or dementia, and the care partners lived with their care recipient. Care partners also had to acknowledge that they were responsible for food planning, and neither could be involved in a research study with an active nutrition intervention. So the study involvement included one in-person study visit And then separately, care partners completed surveys online. And the total time commitment was about 2 hours for the pair, and then an additional 2 hours for the care partner to complete those surveys. So the in-person procedures for the care partner included conducting a physical assessment to evaluate signs and symptoms of nutritional decline. So this was a head-to-toe physical exam that we performed. We also collected, I'm showing you here the assessment known as using the Vegemeter. So a person inserts their finger and there's slight compression, and it essentially evaluates the degree of fruit and vegetable intake with particular nutrients in them. And then we also assessed hand grip strength. I'm showing in this bottom left corner the assessment of hand grip strength, which gives us an idea of the muscle fitness. So the surveys that we collected, most of those concepts are listed here on this slide. We were interested in nutrition knowledge or nutrition literacy, which I'll talk about a little bit later, the caregiving experience, and also all caregivers completed a diet history questionnaire so that we could learn a little bit more about their eating habits. And then we performed the same physical assessments on the care recipients. So the same type of head to toe assessment as we conducted in care partners, but then the care recipient did not complete the additional survey. So it was just that head to toe exam. We also interviewed care partners separately to learn about their experiences in nutrition care and at meal times, and how their activities might affect their own self-care. We also wanted to learn about their interest in how they could be supported in their nutrition goals, endeavors, and how they prefer to receive nutrition guidance and care. So I'm showing here a few characteristics of our participants, just to give you a sense of who is represented. And just to call out a few briefly, you can see that we had a nearly equal representation of biological sex. And also for those with dementia, all stages of dementia were represented, though a majority did have mild or moderate dementia. Our primary interest was to learn about nutrition risk, and we found that nutrition risk, the rate of nutrition risk present in at least one individual of the pair was 48%. So just about half demonstrated nutrition risk. And this is a busy slide, so I'll take a little bit of time to walk through it. Here I'm showing how it breaks down both at the individual level and then also as a pair. So there were a total of 50 care recipients, and 30 of those were nourished, while 20 were malnourished or at risk. So of the 30 who were nourished, 26 had care partners who were nourished, and 4 had care partners who were at nutrition risk. Then when we look at the 20 care recipients who were at risk, of these, 11, where's my cursor? There it is. 11 had nourished care partners and 9 had care partners at nutrition risk. So an important point is that nutrition risk is a situation where a person is not yet malnourished. And so this is an important time for dietitians to be involved in intervention to ensure adequate intake and prevent further nutrition decline. So nutrition risk among care recipients was associated with the dementia stage. In other words, there was greater risk, or risk was more common in more severe stages of dementia. And then we also found that some factors present in the care partners may have played a role in nutrition risk as well. So the care partner's nutrition status, as I already showed in the previous slide, then also the biological sex of care partners, in this case, female care recipients were more often at risk for malnutrition than male care recipients. and the nutrition literacy of care partners. And so on the next slide, I'll talk a little bit more about nutrition literacy and what that is. Then when we look at care partners, their nutrition risk was also associated with nutrition literacy, then including the quality of the care partner's diet, and then their body mass index, which is a measure of weight status. So getting to nutrition literacy, this is how well a person can navigate nutrition information and how they use that to make food choices. So it involves reading nutrition information, trying to show, kind of illustrate what these different skills are in the slide. How people read food labels and apply that information to the decisions they make, how they navigate food product information, knowing what nutrients are in which foods, such as which foods are high in protein, and then also knowing recommended portion sizes and knowing how foods are grouped generally so that they can follow guidance like MyPlate. So as I mentioned before, the care partner's nutrition literacy is one of the factors that had relationship with both the care partner's nutrition status and the care recipient's nutrition status. And so this is a factor that we think that we can impact through intervention, which is something we're hoping to incorporate in our next study. So thinking about what we found from the interviews that we conducted with care partners. So participants were asked the questions, how has becoming a caregiver affected your own food and nutrition? And then also, how has your role in food and nutrition changed since the dementia diagnosis? So one of the themes in the answers that we found to this question is that caregivers are focused on the person that they care for first, and they're focused on themselves last. And this is also a concept that is found in the literature. But a couple of quotes that we thought were powerful from those we interviewed that illustrate these thoughts. First, typically, as a caregiver, I've noticed that I just eat here and there. I graze and I don't actually, if I sit down and eat with him, it has to be that I'm focused on him to make sure that he eats. Then my meal gets cold and then I just nibble. So it's changed a lot. And then another person said, I feel like I'm responsible for all the meals. And in some ways, I tend to delegate it more to, to eating out and stuff like that more than I used to. Because other things, it's important to get her dressed in the morning. It's important to have some routine that she can go through. Another theme in response to those questions was that caregivers are spending more time on nutrition-related tasks for the person that they care for than they did prior to the diagnosis. So I'll read this first quote. One person said, yeah, that's easy. I'm spending almost as much time in the food prep area of our house as she is, and that's 4 to 5 times as much as I did when I earlier retired. Another theme that we found, and this was in response to the question, what changes in your nutrition-related roles have affected you socially? Caregivers shared that they experience social isolation and they want peer support. So I'll read the top quote. You won't even go. This year he wouldn't even go to Christmas dinner at my brother's at all. He did go Memorial Day to his house, but he didn't want to stay long. So he just doesn't want to be socially around people. I think it's because he doesn't remember things and it makes him uncomfortable. It makes him feel like people are judging him and they're really not. But he feels like he's used to being a part of everything and now he's so isolated. And then the last quote, or the last theme that I'll share is that caregivers said they would attend in-person support groups if care for the person with dementia is included. So the first quote here again, in group settings, it's difficult to be separated from my care recipient. I attempted to get into a couple of groups, but they were for the caregivers only, and I didn't like that. So we are trying to be mindful of these things that we've learned as we move into the next study. And so just briefly to go over some of our conclusions, nutrition risk among individuals likely impacts nutrition risk in the partner. In other words, it's a bidirectional factor. They each impact each other. Building nutrition literacy among care partners may improve nutrition outcomes for both individuals. And so we're definitely incorporating this into our next study. Care partners need nutrition support, but interventions must include their care recipients. And that's definitely something that we heard, especially in that last theme and quotes that I was sharing with you. We do know that nutrition risk increases with dementia severity. We saw that in our study, but what we don't know is if nutrition intervention can improve or preserve cognitive decline for those who already have some level of decline. So this is something that we can study further in our future research. So that brings me to our next study, which we're calling Admire 2.0. And in this study, we are exploring the impact of nutrition, lifestyle, exercise, and some other factors on the health of dementia patients and their caregivers. So it is designed for pairs. It is an 8-week lifestyle intervention to support care partners and persons with dementia. It will include 2 weekly 1-hour sessions led by a health coach, and that will be broken down into 30 minutes of exercise and then 30 minutes of discussion, group discussion on a lifestyle topic. And we have 5 different global topics with particular topics within those. And then we'll also be supporting with weekly 30-minute sessions with a dietitian to talk with the pair about their specific nutrition goals and how to progress in meeting those goals. And then we will also be doing 1 virtual and 2 at-home study visits for collecting information at baseline and then at study completion. So all of the sessions will occur virtually or from home, and the study will supply 2 tablets to connect with the dietitians from home, and then 2 fitness trackers, and we're using Garmin specifically. And that's for participants to track their exercise. And then participants will also be reporting nutrition, sleep, and exercise habits through apps and surveys. So you may be wondering, if you're trying to support nutrition status, why not focus only on nutrition? And it's true that many nutrition interventions do focus on food take alone, but this has limited benefit. And I think that this is because nutrition risk in older adults is often rooted in other factors as well. And I've listed those on this slide. So exercise is important. Exercise and nutrition work together to adequately fuel our bodies and to support muscle strength and function. We know that social connection is important for improving dietary intake, and we've seen that as a factor in our baseline study. We also know that caretakers experience significant stress and that stress often worsens eating habits. And we saw that reflected a little bit in some of the feedback we received. And then sleep is also included because sleep adequacy is something that is a challenge for both care partners and people with dementia. And this can lead to worsening metabolic health and changes to appetite. So we want to try to help where we can with those things. So who can participate? Both care partners and people diagnosed with dementia. Care partners must be over the age of 18 and spend at least 20 hours a week caring for the person with dementia. And then persons with dementia must be over the age of 55, diagnosed with mild to moderate dementia, and reside at home. And both must be able to participate in light physical activity, have internet access at home, and not have had a serious medical risk within the last 5 years. And so along the lines of that last component, all participants will be asked to complete a physical activity readiness questionnaire, and this will help us to determine if medical clearance is needed before participation. So with that, I want to give a shout out to our participant advocates who've joined our research team as consultants to the pilot project. And I know a couple had joined us today. These are members of the community who share their perspectives with us on dementia caregiving and are helping us to navigate how to design this lifestyle program for families navigating dementia. So I'm going to stop sharing my slides for now and give them a chance. Bob and Steve, I saw earlier, see if they want to share their thoughts with us.
This is Bob. I can go ahead.
Please.
What I've found so far in the study, it's been encouraging and reinforcing things that I've learned as I've traveled down this path. And it makes me feel better when I see some of the things that I've been doing that's a good thing to do. And then I've also seen a few things that I can improve on. So the biggest thing I've got out of this study so far is that very thing. I've learned what works well and learned what I need to change, especially about the diet. I was probably one of my weakest areas, just making sure that Gail was eating the right foods, and so I've increased the protein as much as I can, and try to, and we usually do anyway, sit down and eat together. Very seldom do we eat separately. I mean, once in a while, she's a Butterfinger candy bar crazy person, and she'll sneak a Butterfinger candy bar and eat it. But other than that, we always try to have breakfast, lunch, and dinner together. And I think that's beneficial too. Even though more times than not, she doesn't say a whole lot. She may say, "Oh, this tastes pretty good," or "It's not so good." She'll tell you if I've made something, or one of our daughters who've been really good at bringing things over, she'll say, "This doesn't taste very good. I don't want it." So she's brutally honest about some of the food that we put out in front of her. But other than that, again, I think it's been, at least so far, and I'll be looking forward to the exercise results and make sure if there's some improvements we need to do there, which is going to be kind of a challenge with her. She's, technically, or right now, we have her in Rock Steady, which is like a 2-day-a-week class where she does mild exercises with a group of other people with Parkinson's and Lewy bodies. And it's been a challenge in the last 2 or 3 months to get her to do exercises on those odd days, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So I'm hoping that when we get this Garmin and a few little gadgets, that it might encourage her to do a little more exercise. So I think that's going to be one of my challenges, quite frankly, is to get her to step up to the exercise plate. So
Yeah. Well, thanks, Bob. And we've learned so much from your experience and really appreciate how you've helped us to think through some of the challenges.
it's funny because, like, even today when we were at Rock Steady, um, when you freeze up and the patient can't walk, they kind of stutter there a little bit. I saw one of the caregivers, she put her foot right down in front. I've never seen this. She put her foot right down in front of that person, and they stepped right over her foot, and that freeze went away. I've never seen that. And it worked unbelievably, and so that, again, you think you've got your arms around this thing and you think you know everything, and then you learn something every once in a while. You see something, you think, wow. So, and those are things we can share, I think, when we go down this path too, with other folks in this study. The other thing I like is trying to capture the good things and that work well, and the groups that are available to talk to and participate in, and anything else that comes up, because it's, even if it seems small, it might be a big deal to somebody who's struggling walking. So, for
An
example,
opportunity to learn from each other is
yes, absolutely.
something I hope we gain. I saw Steve and Brent also on. Do either one of you want to share your thoughts? Thanks, Bob.
You're welcome.
I was thankful to be included in the study and being able to be present for the different takeaways. And I commend you all on the work that you've done. I had just the one comment, which I had brought up at the end of the last session, was I think going forward, I would encourage us to be thinking about different types of dietary changes that are in step with the MIND diet, which particularly for female patients has been shown to decrease the cognitive decline. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Steve, you have a couple thoughts?
If I'm locked out. Oh, there we go.
Hey
Hey.
there.
Great, thank you. So my wife Helen was diagnosed with dementia, likely Alzheimer's, about 3 years ago. And really from the very beginning, we were interested in becoming involved in research studies. And we were encouraged by her neurologist who actually described research participants as heroes while relating a story from his own family. So we took part in the first Admire study, which is, as Heather said earlier, only took really a morning, but it was as interesting to be involved in that. We enjoyed meeting and interacting with Rebecca and Austin morning. So, but I was surprised when Rebecca called me at 3 months ago back in the fall and asked me to be part of a group that would participate in reviewing the Admire 2 documents, the program materials. That just being asked to do even that much was gratifying to me. Very interesting, reviewing the page after page of details, looking for everything from typos to inconsistencies between pages, and then dozens and dozens of hyperlinks that we were checking to make sure they went to the right place and worked properly. And again, looking at the study documents that we had was somewhat inspirational to me, because there were a whole lot of things there that even in that was I could find useful, that would be helpful in our everyday living. And really not just diet again, but all sorts of things: exercise, social connection. Those are all concerns I have on Helen's behalf. So I don't know how common it is to include quote unquote civilians in reviewing program material like this, but I would encourage you to continue doing that. In my own working days, when looking at big projects, you try to get as many eyes and minds involved as possible to make the best decisions. So I'm grateful to have been invited to the table, and I truly enjoyed being part of the process to help shape the program a little bit.
Yeah, and I just appreciate all three of you for joining us. I think it's so helpful to make sure that we're spending our time doing things that hopefully will be of help to the people we're trying to help. So I think we're a couple minutes over, and Kelly, I'll defer to you now for what we do moving forward. So thank you
well,
all for your time. And also, oh, sorry, I forgot to acknowledge Rebecca. Rebecca Mount is my study coordinator to the Admire study. She's here, and I should have mentioned her name at the very beginning. So, but really appreciate her support on the project too. So Kelly, I'll be quiet now.
No, thank you. Thank you all. And it's particularly our study participants. It's so exciting, and it makes me feel quite grateful to see the people who respond so generously to our request for participation in the studies. And thanks to all three of you for sharing your insight. It's nice to know that this is actually happening and not just a bunch of results in a journal somewhere. So thank you to all of you. Thank you for all of you who listen to these stories. And if you feel motivated to sign up for Admire or another study, I'm going to put the link in the chat again so that you can access it. And as I mentioned at the beginning of our call, this video will eventually be available for you to watch again. Dr. Gibbs, I want to point you to the chat because there are a few questions.
Okay.
I thought about answering them, but I think you probably would be better at doing that. So if you don't
Sure.
mind taking a look at the chat.
Yeah.
While I add some more links and things.
So the first question, do food deserts add even more complications to those who have nutrition risks? That's a complicated answer, probably. If people can't access healthy food, that makes it difficult for them to eat healthfully. Not always when grocery stores that are like larger supermarkets are put in food deserts, do people make different choices in the food that they eat? So it's much more complicated than that, but I think definitely we can easily say access to a healthy food supply is fundamentally necessary to be able to eat healthfully. The second question I see is there a simple way to estimate how many grams of protein we intake each day? To measure your food intake, there are several different ways of doing that. If you have a smartphone, the app MyFitnessPal is one that you can pretty easily use to track your food intake. So that would be one way that you don't have to just know how much protein is in your food. Another thing you could do if you are reading food labels, you could, estimate, like portion out how much you eat of foods and try to track that. That's going to be a lot more tedious, but that would be one way as well. Is a Vegemeter that uses spectroscopy-based skin measurement? Yes, that is what it does, and is a device available for home use. It is not, as far as lab equipment goes, it's not the most expensive lab equipment, but it is pretty expensive, too expensive, I would say, for routine home use. The ADRC I know has a couple of these. I don't know if they're available for people to assess themselves, probably not, but we are going to be performing this assessment in our studies moving forward. It is pretty quick and painless, really. And Dr. Beasley shared about the MIND diet decreasing risk of cognitive decline. And we definitely have all of those elements incorporated into the nutrition guidance that we'll be providing in the intervention study. So definitely do endorse that too. I think I got through all the questions, but I'm happy to stick around for a little bit and answer any other questions you have, as long as Kelly says we have time. So
We have time.
Yeah.
I put the most recent things in the chat should be the link for the study and the flyer. The link for the study is specific to this webinar. We're not tracking you all individually, but we do want to know how many people come to the webinar and then click on the link. So the link that's on today's webinar will let us know how many of you saw this and thought, oh, well, I'm going to go after that. If you are watching this in the future, or if you don't get the link today and you think, oh, I'm still interested, we do have an existing link otherwise. But for today and for a little while, we do want to know what this webinar did in terms of interest. So that's the sort of less interesting data collection that we do. And we are always excited to hear from the actual study people about the exciting parts. So thank you for that. Anybody, feel free to unmute yourselves if you like, or use the chat for another moment or so.
I'll just add
Yes.
real quickly that we're hoping to get started pretty soon. And in this wave, we're only recruiting 7 pairs. So if you think you have interest, we appreciate you reaching out to us as soon as possible so that we can ensure that we get you screened and get you enrolled in the study. And please feel free to pass it on to other people who you think might be interested.
Wonderful. Okay, a couple other things I want to say before we go. We've got Admire that's kicking off. We've got the CARE study, which you've maybe read about in our newsletter over the last couple of months. Next week's webinar will be about our CARE study, which is also an intervention for partners and a conversation about how care partners have been financially impacted in their role as caregiving, in caregiving. And I think that really goes well nicely with the conversation about nutrition. Money is also often a big factor, we'll say, in terms of caregiving. So that will be our conversation next week. And then I won't tell you past next week because I'll keep you in a little bit of suspense, but I will mention that A lot of you have seen our information on social media and in the newsletter about our COMET study on exercise. And, we've been recruiting pretty intensely for the COMET study. I think our most recent Facebook posts have talked about wanting a few good men for the COMET study. And some of the ladies out there have said, what? Why can't we do it? Well, I'm very excited to tell you that if you are interested in the COMET study, we want you, no matter what your gender identity is. So we're going to have some information about that in the next issue of My Alliance. So if you're thinking about exercising, you've got a New Year's resolution, it's not too late. Previously, we've asked for people who are not particularly active exercisers because we want to kind of measure what difference the exercising does. So anyway, read your Next in My Alliance newsletter and see about the COMET study. All genders are welcome. So stay tuned for that. I don't see any more questions or any hands up, so we will wrap this up for now. It's great to be back with you, everybody. My Thursdays are already better now that this is back on the plate, and I just will take a point of privilege. I just finished my second year of being at KU, so I'm starting my third year of hosting the weekly webinar, and it really is probably my favorite thing I do here, and that's largely in part of this, thanks to this audience. So thank you all, and we'll see you next Thursday. Take care. Bye-bye.